You didn't collapse. You didn't break. You didn't wake up one morning and realize you were gone. You faded, gradually, quietly, in ways too small to notice. While they were happening, there was no moment of impact, no single decision that erased you, no clear line between who you were and who you became. It happened in fragments. You stopped saying what you really thought, not to lie, to avoid friction. You stopped wanting what you really wanted, not because it disappeared, because it complicated your life. You stopped reacting the way you used to, not because you stopped caring, because caring made things harder to carry. Each time, something in you stepped back, not permanently, just enough to survive the moment. But the moments never stopped, and neither did the retreat. You adjusted, you adapted, you became easier to maintain, more predictable, more stable, more acceptable. People began to recognize you more easily because you became someone recognizable, someone understandable, someone safe. But safety came with a cost, not immediately, quietly. You began to feel less present inside your own life, less connected to your own voice, less certain of who was still there. You didn't question it because nothing was technically wrong. Your life still functioned. You still existed. You still continued. Continuation hides disappearance perfectly because from the outside, nothing is missing. But from the inside, something is gone. Not your body, not your identity, your presence. You were still there, responding, performing, maintaining, but no longer arriving. And the most dangerous part is, you don't remember exactly when it started, only that somewhere along the way, you slowly disappeared, without noticing. At first, it didn't feel like losing yourself. It felt like growing up. You became more careful, more controlled, more aware of consequences. You stopped saying things that created tension, stopped choosing things that created uncertainty, stopped trusting impulses that didn't guarantee safety. You told yourself this is what maturity looks like. Less chaos, more stability, less emotion, more control. And it worked. Your life became easier to manage, easier to explain, easier to continue. You became someone who knew how to function, someone who knew how to maintain. Maintenance became your strength, but maintenance requires sacrifice. Not visible sacrifices, internal ones. You stopped expressing parts of yourself that didn't fit your life anymore, not because they weren't real, because they weren't practical. You stopped listening to instincts that didn't make sense, stopped exploring thoughts that didn't lead anywhere predictable, stopped following feelings that disrupted your stability. Each time the adjustment was small, reasonable, justified. You didn't feel like you were disappearing, you felt like you were adapting. Adapting to expectations, adapting to reality, adapting to survive. Survival rewards adaptation. It rewards consistency. It rewards predictability. It rewards the version of you that doesn't create problems. So you became that version. Reliable, stable, understandable, but reliability replaced something less efficient, less predictable, less easy to maintain. You stopped being fully yourself, not because you chose to leave, because you learned how to remain. Remaining requires less risk, less exposure, less presence. Presence is unpredictable. Presence creates friction. Friction creates change. Change threatens stability. So stability replaced presence. You didn't feel it happening because nothing broke. Nothing forced you to notice. Your life kept working. You kept continuing. And the longer you continued, the harder it became to remember what it felt like. To be fully there. Disappearing doesn't feel dramatic while it's happening. It feels practical, reasonable, necessary. You don't wake up and decide to abandon yourself. You learn how to edit yourself, piece by piece, moment by moment. You begin to notice which parts of you create friction, which parts create discomfort, which parts don't fit the life you're trying to stabilize. So you adjust, not because you are weak, because you are intelligent enough to survive. You stop saying certain things, stop expressing certain emotions, stop admitting certain truths, not because they aren't real, because they complicate your existence. Complication threatens stability. Stability becomes your priority. Priority determines identity. Your identity begins shifting toward what your life can sustain, not what your life once inspired. You become quieter inside yourself, not silent externally, silent internally. You start ignoring instincts that don't align with your current direction, ignoring questions that don't have safe answers, ignoring impulses that don't guarantee safe outcomes. Safety becomes your compass. Safety removes risk. Risk is where transformation lives. Without risk, transformation stops. You stop evolving, not because you reached your final form, Because you reached your most sustainable form. Sustainability keeps your life intact, keeps your relationships intact, keeps your identity intact. But sustainability comes with an invisible cost. It freezes you. You become fixed, predictable, consistent. Consistency makes you easier to maintain. Maintenance becomes your function. You learn how to maintain your responsibilities, maintain your image, maintain your role, maintain the version of yourself your life expects. Expectation becomes your container. Containers limit expansion. Expansion creates uncertainty. Uncertainty threatens continuation. Continuation becomes your goal, not growth. Continuation. You begin repeating yourself, repeating routines, repeating thoughts, repeating behaviors. Repetition stabilizes identity. Identity stabilizes life. Life becomes manageable. Manageable becomes empty. Not obviously empty, subtly empty. You don't feel broken. You feel reduced. Reduced to function. Reduced to sequence. Reduced to continuation. Continuation requires no presence, only compliance. You comply with your routines. Comply with your responsibilities. Comply with your environment. Compliance preserves stability. Stability preserves survival. Survival preserves your body, not your presence. Presence begins fading, not all at once, gradually. You notice it in small ways. Moments that should mean something, but don't. Experiences that should reach you, but pass through you. Emotions that should move you, but barely register. You tell yourself this is normal. This is adulthood. This is maturity. This is what happens when life becomes serious. But seriousness isn't what removed you. Adaptation did. Adaptation removed the parts of you that disrupted stability. Adaptation removed unpredictability. Adaptation removed vulnerability. Adaptation removed aliveness. Aliveness is inefficient. Aliveness creates chaos. Chaos threatens structure. Structure preserves continuation. Continuation replaces presence. Presence becomes unnecessary. Your life continues without it. You continue without it. You become someone who exists reliably. Reliability becomes your identity. Reliable people don't collapse. Reliable people don't disappear. Reliable people maintain. You maintain perfectly, so perfectly, no one notices you're gone. Not even you, because disappearance doesn't feel like absence. It feels like normal. Normal continuation. Normal repetition. Normal stability. Until one day, you realize something unsettling. You don't feel fully here. Not in this moment. Not in your life. Not in yourself. You search for the version of you that once felt real. You search your thoughts, your memories, your feelings, but everything feels distant. Like something you used to be, not something you still are. You didn't vanish instantly. You faded slowly. So slowly! You never noticed the moment you stopped being fully present. And the most disturbing part is, your life never stopped continuing without you. The realization doesn't arrive when something breaks. It arrives when nothing does. You're in the middle of something ordinary, something familiar, a routine you've repeated so many times, it no longer requires your attention. You're speaking, responding, nodding, continuing, and suddenly you feel it, a separation, not between you and the world, between you and yourself. You hear your voice, but it doesn't feel connected to you. You feel your body moving, but it doesn't feel directed by you. Everything is functioning, but you're not fully inside it. It's subtle, easy to ignore, easy to dismiss. You tell yourself you're just tired, just distracted, just overwhelmed. But this feels different. This feels deeper. This feels like absence. You realize something unsettling. Your life has learned how to operate without your presence, not because it rejected you, because it adapted. Adaptation protects continuation. Continuation keeps systems stable. Your life is a system. Your identity is a system. Your routines are like a system. Systems don't require presence. They require function. Function became your replacement. You became efficient. Efficient at responding. Efficient at performing. Efficient at existing. Efficiency removes friction. Friction creates awareness. Without friction, nothing interrupts the pattern. Patterns repeat. Repetition stabilizes identity. Identity stabilizes behavior. Behavior stabilizes life. Your life stabilized perfectly. Perfect stability leaves no space for presence. Presence requires disruption. Disruption threatens continuation. Continuation became your priority. Not consciously, automatically. Automatic living requires less effort, less emotional energy, less vulnerability. Vulnerability exposes uncertainty. Uncertainty threatens stability. So your system removed vulnerability. Removing vulnerability removed presence. Presence is fragile. Presence is sensitive. Presence is easily lost when survival becomes more important than experience. You weren't trying to disappear. You were trying to survive. Survival rewards predictability. Predictability rewards repetition. Repetition rewards absence. Absence protects you from overwhelm. Overwhelm threatens continuation. Continuation preserves identity. Identity preserves your role. Your role became stronger than your presence. You knew how to act, knew how to respond, knew how to continue. But you stopped knowing how to be. Being requires awareness. Awareness requires presence. Presence requires risk. Risk creates instability. Instability threatens survival. So survival replaced being. You became someone who functioned, not someone who existed fully. Your body stayed. Your responsibilities stayed. Your routines stayed. Your life stayed. You didn't. Not completely. You stepped back. Internally, psychologically, emotionally. You became an observer, watching yourself continue, watching your life unfold, watching your identity perform its role, without requiring your participation. Participation creates uncertainty. Observation creates safety. Safety became your refuge. Refuge became your prison. Not a visible prison, an internal one. You are free to move, free to act, free to continue, but not free to fully exist inside your own life. Existence requires presence. Presence requires courage. Courage requires you to feel everything. Feeling everything includes pain. Pain threatens stability. Stability protects survival. Survival became enough. Enough to continue, not enough to live. You begin to see how long this has been happening. How many moments you passed through without arriving. How many experiences you never fully entered. How many emotions you never fully felt. Not because they weren't there. Because you weren't. You didn't disappear completely. You disappeared gradually. Gradual disappearance is invisible. Invisible disappearance is easy to accept. Acceptance stabilizes absence. Absence becomes normal. Normal becomes identity. Identity becomes permanent. You forgot what it felt like to be fully present. Not because you chose to forget, because you learned how to live without needing it. Your life became sustainable. Sustainability replaced aliveness. Aliveness is unpredictable. Unpredictability threatens survival. So survival won. Your life continued. Your identity remained. Your presence faded. Until one moment, you finally noticed, and now you can't stop seeing it. You slowly disappeared, and your life never stopped continuing without you. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Not because something changes, because something finally becomes visible. You start noticing how often you're absent. Not absent from places, absent from yourself. You're sitting in a room, but you're not fully there. You're having a conversation, but you're not fully inside it. You're living your life, but you're not fully experiencing it. It feels like watching something instead of being part of it. And that realization hurts. Not sharply, quietly. A quiet grief. Grief doesn't always come from loss. Sometimes it comes from distance. Distance between who you are and who you used to feel like. You remember a version of yourself who was more present, more alive, more connected, not happier. Real. Real in a way that didn't require effort. Real in a way that didn't require maintenance. You didn't have to force yourself to feel. You simply did. Now feeling requires attention, effort, awareness. You realize how much of your life passes automatically. Days blur together. Moments blur together. Experiences blur together. Nothing stays long enough to leave an imprint. Imprints require presence. Presence is what disappeared. You begin questioning things you never questioned before. When did this start? How long have I been like this? Was there a moment I could have stopped it? You search your memory, not for events, for yourself. But everything feels distant, like watching someone else's life, not remembering your own. You didn't lose your life. You lost your connection to it. Connection makes experience real. Without connection, experience feels temporary, replaceable, meaningless. Not because it is, because you're not fully there to receive it. You start to feel grief for moments that already passed, moments you can't return to, moments you never fully lived. Not because they weren't important, because you weren't fully present. You were surviving. Survival protects you from overwhelm, but survival also removes depth. Depth requires vulnerability. Vulnerability requires risk. Risk threatens stability. Stability became your priority. Priority determines identity. You became someone stable, someone reliable, someone consistent. Consistency replaced spontaneity. Spontaneity creates presence. Without spontaneity, life becomes predictable. Predictability becomes routine. Routine becomes automatic. Automatic becomes empty. Not visibly empty. Internally empty. You feel it now. That emptiness. Not total emptiness. Partial emptiness. The part of you that disappeared. You wonder if it's permanent. If this is who you are now. If this is what life becomes. Continuation without presence. Existence without participation. Living without being there. You begin to understand something difficult. Your disappearance wasn't an accident. It was adaptation. You adapted to survive your life. Adapted to maintain stability. Adapted to protect yourself. Protection created distance. Distance created absence. Absence created grief. Not grief for something that ended. Grief for something that faded. Grief for yourself. You realize something else. No one noticed, because nothing stopped working. Your life continued. You continued. You functioned perfectly. Function hides absence. Function hides disappearance. Function hides loss. But you see it now. You see the distance. You see the absence. You see yourself standing outside your own life. And the hardest part isn't that you disappeared. It's that you don't know when it happened. It doesn't happen all at once. Coming back isn't a decision. It's an interruption. Something breaks the sequence. Not dramatically, quietly. You're in the middle of something ordinary, and suddenly you feel something real. Not strong, not overwhelming, just real. A reaction you didn't plan, a thought you didn't filter, an emotion you didn't suppress. It catches you off guard because it feels unfamiliar, not new, forgotten. You pause, not physically, internally, and inside that pause, you feel yourself, not the version of you that functions, not the version of you that performs. You, unfiltered, unmaintained, present. Presence feels unstable. Unstable feels dangerous. Dangerous feels alive. You realize how long it's been since something felt alive. Not exciting, alive. Alive in a way that makes you aware of yourself. Aware of your body. Aware of your thoughts. Aware of your existence. Awareness interrupts automatic living. Automatic living kept you safe. Automatic living kept you stable. Automatic living kept you absent. Now something interrupts it. An interruption creates choice. Choice creates uncertainty. Uncertainty creates fear. Fear creates possibility. Possibility creates tension. Tension creates presence. Presence begins returning. Not permanently, in fragments. Small fragments. Moments where you notice things more clearly. Moments where you feel more connected. Moments where you stop observing and start experiencing. Experience requires participation. Participation requires vulnerability. Vulnerability requires courage. Courage feels unfamiliar because courage requires you to stop hiding. Hiding protected you. Protected you from overwhelm. Protected you from pain. Protected you from instability. But protection also removed you from your life. Now protection begins weakening. Not because it failed, because it's no longer necessary. You survived. Survival was the goal. But survival is not the same as living. Living requires presence. Presence requires you to risk feeling again. Feeling again means risking discomfort. Discomfort means risking change. Change threatens stability. Stability became your identity. Now identity begins to shift. Not externally, internally. You begin noticing your absence more clearly. Not as shame, as truth. Truth creates awareness. Awareness creates responsibility. Responsibility creates agency. Agency creates freedom. Freedom feels overwhelming because freedom means you can return. Return to your life. Return to your presence. Return to yourself. You don't need to rebuild anything. You need to re-enter it. Re-enter the moments you used to observe. Re-enter the emotions you used to avoid. Re-enter the experiences you used to survive. Survival kept you distant. Presence brings you closer. Closer to uncertainty. Closer to vulnerability. Closer to reality. Reality feels heavier. Heavier feels real. Real feels alive. You begin to understand something important. You never fully disappeared. You stepped back. Stepped back to protect yourself. Step back to survive. Now you can step forward. Not all at once. Gradually. Presence doesn't return instantly. It returns in layers. Each layer reveals something you forgot. Forgot what it feels like to be fully here. Forgot what it feels like to exist without distance. Forgot what it feels like to be yourself. Yourself was never gone. Yourself was waiting. Waiting beneath adaptation. Waiting beneath survival. Waiting beneath stability. Now stability feels different. Not wrong. Incomplete. Incomplete creates movement. Movement creates change. Change creates becoming. Becoming creates life. Life begins returning. Not because your circumstances changed, because your presence did. Presence changes everything. Presence reconnects you to experience. Experience reconnects you to meaning. Meaning reconnects you to yourself. Yourself reconnects you to life. You are still here. Not fully, not yet, but more than before. And that is enough to begin. Enough to return, enough to exist, enough to stop disappearing. Coming back doesn't feel like becoming someone new. It feels like recognizing someone old, someone familiar, someone you haven't seen in a long time. At first, it's unsettling, because you realize how long you've been living without fully being there. How many moments passed through you? How many experiences never reached you? How much of your life you survived instead of lived? You don't feel panic. You feel exposure. Exposure to yourself. You begin noticing things you used to ignore. The silence between moments. The wait inside ordinary experiences. The subtle awareness of being inside your own body again. Not observing it. Inhabiting it. Inhabiting feels heavier. Heavier feels real. Real feels fragile. Fragility reminds you that presence can be lost. You understand now how it happened. Not through one decision. Through many small abandonments. Every time you chose safety over truth. Every time you chose stability over aliveness. Every time you chose continuation over presence. You stepped back. Not enough to stop living. Enough to stop arriving. Arrival is different from continuation. Continuation happens automatically. Arrival requires intention. Intention requires awareness. Awareness requires courage. Courage requires you to stop hiding. You hid well, so well. You convinced yourself you were still fully here. But now you see the difference. The difference between existing and being present. Presence is unmistakable. Presence fills moments with depth. Depth creates memory. Memory creates identity. Identity creates meaning. Meaning creates life. You begin to feel life again. Not all at once. In fragments. Small, quiet fragments. Moments where you feel connected. Moments where you feel aware. Moments where you feel yourself. Yourself is not who you became. Yourself is who remained beneath adaptation. Adaptation built your survival. But survival was never your destination. Survival was a bridge that carried you through uncertainty. Now you are on the other side. Not somewhere new, somewhere real. Real feels unfamiliar at first, because familiarity was built on absence. Absence was predictable. Absence was safe. Absence required nothing from you. Presence asks everything. Your attention, your honesty, your vulnerability, your willingness to exist without protection. Protection helped you survive. But protection also kept you hidden. Now hiding feels unnecessary. Not because the world became safer, because you became ready. Ready to feel again. Ready to exist again. Ready to stop disappearing. You realize something important. You never truly vanished. You were waiting. Waiting beneath routines. Waiting beneath expectations. Waiting beneath the identity you learned to perform. Performance kept your life moving. Presence brings your life back to you. Not the external structure, the internal experience. You don't need a different life. You need to enter the one you already have. Fully, honestly, without distance. Distance made survival easier. Presence makes life real. Real life includes discomfort, includes uncertainty, includes risk, but it also includes you. You are no longer watching from the outside. You are here, not perfectly, not permanently, but consciously. And consciousness changes everything. Because once you realize you disappeared, you also realize something else. You can stop. You can stop fading, stop retreating, stop abandoning yourself in small, invisible ways. You can begin returning, not by forcing change, by allowing presence. Presence in ordinary moments. Presence in uncomfortable emotions. Presence in yourself. Yourself was never destroyed, only hidden. Hidden long enough to feel lost, but not long enough to be gone forever. You slowly disappeared, but disappearance was never your final state. It was your protection. Now, protection is no longer necessary. Now you can exist without distance, without hiding, without disappearing, because the truth is, you were never meant to survive your life. You were meant to be inside it.